And hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian Renteria, and this is the Movie Pit Podcast. And today, as you can see from the title, we are talking about not one, not two, but three movies that have come out over the past weekend, and all three of them very degree of enjoyment for me and my in my taste. Some would say my poor taste. Anyway, moving on from that. Hello. We're going to talk about three movies. This is going to be, I don't know why I said this that way. This is going to be a different way that I've been doing reactions, reviews, whatever you want to call them, to the movies that I've been watching. You know, I've been doing a lot of monthly reviews. I mentioned in the last monthly review, which was for May, that I was going to start doing more of these kind of singular or double feature reviews, reactions to movies, because obviously we are in the summer and we're in the prime summer movie season with things coming out. So I wanted to do things a little differently with that. So I'm kind of going back to how I originally did reviews and slash reactions to movies. So I'll be, telling you the director, and I'll be telling you some cons or missteps, and then pros, and then my overall feelings on them. So it's going to be a little scattered. It's not going to be usually how I've been talking about these movies recently. And I just want to test this out, see how it is, and then maybe hear from you. Which version do you like more? Do you like the version where I just kind of go about it and talk about the movie and talk about my feelings like I did with the monthly reviews? Or if you like how I do it with here, where I do cons and missteps, pros, and overall feelings, stuff like that. This is not going to be like a full-fledged version of what I was originally doing with the cons, missteps, and pros and stuff like that. Because I'm talking about three movies. It's usually when I do only one movie, so it's a little bit of a shorter version because I also don't want this podcast to be too long. So we're going to be, doing it like that. But let me know how which version you like. Do you like kind of the monthly review version of how I do movies, or do you like this version that I'm about to do? All right, so let's talk about the first movie. First movie is going to be Under Paris. It's a new Netflix movie. It's directed by Xavier Gens, who I think most people probably know as the director of the Hitman movie, the one with Timothy Olyphant, the one that came out years and years ago. He also directed The Divide. He directed segments of The ABCs of Death and episodes of Gangs of London and Netflix's Lupin. A synopsis for the movie: Sophia, played by Bernice Bejo, who was one of the Bond girls. I think it was. Can't remember which one it was now. I think it was. I didn't write it down because I was like, no, I'll remember. I don't remember. I think might have been Spectre. I can't remember, but she was a Bond girl. She plays a scientist in the movie, a grieving scientist with a tragic past, and is forced to face her past when a giant shark appears in the river Seine in Paris. Obviously, reason why it's called Under Paris, right before a triathlon that the city is throwing. So some cons, missteps, slash missteps. This takes a little bit after the opening to really get going. By the time it gets going, it's, kind of already the final act, or it's leading up to the final act. And you're like, yeah, this is what I wanted the whole movie. There is a big chunk of this movie where it's just people talking, and there's not enough, of why you're there. So it does take a little bit to get going, but when everything, happens, it's pretty good, and I'll get to that in a second. The next con slash misstep, this is probably a con for me and a con for a lot of people from the brief time that I was looking up reactions to this. There is a character in this movie that overall in the real world stands for something that is right, and stands for something that's like, yeah, we should be doing that. And it's the character of Mika. And I forgot to put down the actress's name. Her character, she's part of an independent animal kind of ocean rescue group, and she admires the work of the character Sophia, because Sophia is supposed to be, very also at the beginning of the movie kind of this ocean slash animal, activist who is, trying to save, the oceans, because without the oceans, and there's a scene with her like afterwards, like all these years later, with like in a in a aquarium or museum. I think it's an aquarium because they're standing in front of an aquarium, but it's never actually mentioned if it's an aquarium or if it's a museum. But she's there and she's like leading this like school group, and she's telling them, without the oceans, we wouldn't, be alive. And there's a lot of, great things about the ocean that is worth saving. And then there's this little kid who's like on his phone and laughing, and he's like, "Hey, miss, like, is it true your crew died?" And they're laughing about it like it's funny, and like, obviously it's a movie, so she's not, she's obviously still haunted by it, and it's very tragic. But like in the real world, I'm pretty sure she will smack the shit out of that little kid. But I'm not for child abuse, but in instances like that, I think it's okay. Anyway, going back to the character of Mika. Again, what she stands for in the real world is fine. What she does in the movie, her message and everything, she has this big, kind of montage moment where she's, sending out a message. And it's like, yeah, that kind of message is great. But the way she goes about it and the way her character goes about things, it's dumb. It's stupid. And there's a point where her right-hand man character tells her at a point when Mika is doing something that is very stupid. What are you doing? This is stupid. This is dangerous. This is wrong. You can't do this. I may not have, because there's a tracker on the giant shark so the giant shark in general has a tracker on it because Sophia has been tracking it, and she thinks it's like this special shark. And she's been tracking it kind of for years and years. So the hacker, the group has a hacker, which is the right-hand woman, and she was able to, go into the machine, and she's able to shut it off at a certain point when she shouldn't shut it off. But Mika is all about like, we gotta save the shark, and the way she goes about it is the dumbest fucking way you can go about it. I don't want to swear. I'm getting more comfortable swearing on my podcast, but it is fucking dumb what she does. It is so stupid. And us as a viewer, when you see the things she does and how she goes about it and how crazy she's going about it, she's like, you know what? You deserve to die. I'm not going to spoil if she dies or not. But she's one of those characters that ruins the movie a little bit. And I don't want to blame the actress because it's not her fault. She's, doing what she's told to do. But, that her character is probably the worst character in the movie. And I put it up on my Twitter account for the podcast that there's one true villain in this movie, and it's not the shark. So take that for what you will. Okay, moving on. The pros of this movie, of things that I liked. It's two very small things. First, the idea of a shark in the Seine, the river, Paris, the river that's, kind of running through Paris. That's cool. It is. It's a cool idea. It's a cool idea to have a shark in the River Seine, but it's a bit of a stretch of how they explain it and everything. And they do explain like, hey, here's the reason why the shark is in the River Seine. And it's like, okay, like, is that true? Like, I don't know anything about sharks. I'm not an expert on that. So I just take, what the movie tells me and be like, okay, I guess that's okay. And maybe in this world, it's okay. That's how it is. But yeah, I don't know. The idea is cool. Execution wise, it's a little lacking, but the idea, the concept of the movie is something that this is one of the reasons why I ended up watching the movie in general. The practical / gore effects are also pretty good. It does sometimes feel like they're hiding them or cutting away from them and not really focusing on them for a little bit. I don't know why, since it's already a rated R movie, but when they showcase it and when you see, the after effects, it's like, oh, like that's really good. Like the practical effects in this movie are real, and you can tell they're practical, are really good. And for some reason you're hiding them with like quick cutaways or not, fully showing. And it's not like this movie was like, oh yeah, like this is going to be like an exploitation movie, but it's like, you're putting all that good work into it. Just show it. Why are you afraid of it? So those are my two, quick pros. So my overall feelings on Under Paris, this is very much trying to be a modern day Jaws. You have the giant shark. You have a mayor who is telling people that everything's fine, that there is no shark in the River Seine, because of the triathlon that's coming up. That is very important for them, and she's trying to keep everything very tight-lipped. Of course, especially when people are telling her that, no, you have to shut this down, but we need a triathlon because we put a lot of money into this, and the Olympics are coming into town, which is oddly funny because obviously the Olympics this year are in Paris and they are swimming in the River Seine. That's kind of funny, a little reality there wise. Character wise, they're kind of generic characters. Sophia, like I mentioned, is reeling from a grief of the opening attack that killed her crew. Mika is just a dumb character. There's a police character named Adil, who is kind of the main cop that we follow, that, ends up with Sophia and ends up with Mika, and he doesn't believe there's a shark in the Seine, but then, he sees it, or I don't think he sees it, I think his team sees it, and then they, obviously he believes his team, so he's like, okay, well, I take this very seriously now, this is a real thing, and he's got his own story, like his own backstory, which is fine, but it kind of comes in so late into the movie, where you're like, it doesn't really matter anymore, like, I just want to see giant shark kill people, so I don't know. I wasn't really expecting too much from the movie. The movie also doesn't really deliver as much as you would think. It's a giant shark movie, and when the giant shark stuff happens, when the shark carnage rather starts and goes, it's great. I love that stuff. That's the best parts of the movie. But other than everything, it's everything that happens in between that's like, this is not good. And I don't know, there's like a bunch of people online saying this is like this is the best shark movie that's happened in a while, and this, that, or the other. I'm like, really? That's what you're going with? This. Okay, maybe you just haven't seen, maybe I just haven't seen enough giant shark movies. Maybe all the other ones are really, really bad, and I just happen to watch the one that I think is bad for me. I will say this thing does set up sequels, which I don't know if I'd be down for that. They do this crazy thing at the end, which I wasn't expecting. And the fact that they did it is absolutely crazy to me. And I had to go back and remember, it's like, why did this happen? Like, why did it set up that way? And I couldn't remember. But it is what it is. That's under Paris rating wise. I'm going to start bringing back the rating system that I made all those years ago. And I never used when I talk about a movie. So I do have a rating system that I made. I might have to readjust this a little bit, but I will tell you what the rating system that I used when I used this, the few times that I did a movie. So my rating system was stamp of approval, which is anything obviously in the 5-star range, anything from five stars to some an occasional 4.5 movies. Recommend. Which is anything in the from the 4.5 to the 4 range. Rent or stream it. This might be changed a little bit because obviously the whole conversation about people not going to movies anymore. I think you should really go to movies, but I also understand the argument of like, hey, COVID happened. It changed people's perspectives of how they want to, go to the movies, how they want to view their movies. So I get that. That's a whole other conversation. I'm not going to, put that into this podcast here, but there's the rent or stream option that I created, which was anything in the 3 range. So 3.5, anything in that range. The pass/don't bother category that I had, which was anything in the 2 to 1 star range. And then I simply put it here, no. So I'm assuming he's like, no, don't do it or run away. That's anything obviously under a 1, which this is not. I would say stream it. That's my thing. Stream it. Obviously it's on streaming, so that kind of defeats the purpose. But even if it was like a rental thing or a VOD thing, I'd say go ahead and rent it. But it's I've seen worse. I've seen worse movies than this. It does get a little stale. I won't say stale. That seems kind of harsh. It does get a little slow. Let's put it that way. It gets a little slow in the middle, and when there's not shark stuff happening, and you want shark stuff to be happening. When the shark stuff happens, it's great. It's a good movie. But when it's not, it's kind of slow. So I've seen worse. I would still say stream it. Kind of, have it on the background while you're folding clothes or something. It isn't French, so that might be a little bit of an issue. But if you want to put the dub on, I guess you can do that. Next movie, The Watchers. Directed by Ishana Shyamalan, of course, the daughter of M. Night Shyamalan. Also, her feature film debut. She is, this is her first movie. She has directed stuff in the past. It's mainly to the Apple TV Plus series Servants, which I hear is very good. I have not watched it, but I do hear some good things about it. She also wrote the movie, but this is based on a novel by A.M. Shine, a novel which I have not read, so I don't know. I won't be making comparisons to the book or the movie. Synopsis. Mina, played by Dakota Fanning, gets stranded in a mysterious forest in Ireland, where she encounters three strangers who shelter in a mysterious shack and are stalked at night by mysterious creatures. That is the bare bones of what this movie is. So some cons / missteps of the movie. I mentioned on the Twitter page for the podcast that if you hadn't seen this movie yet and you were excited for it, maybe lower your expectations. The Watchers is not a bad movie. I want to come out full-fledged and say it is not a bad movie. There's plenty to like. I'll get to that. It does fumble, however, on itself in the second half of the movie, which leads to my next point. The reveals of the movie are a bit over-explained, and that's something you don't want in a kind of mystery aspect movie. You don't want the reveals to be over-explained to you. And it almost felt like they were also coming up with it, the ending and the reveals, as the movie progressed, because I felt that the movie was going to end at a certain point, and I was like, oh, it didn't end, it's keep going. I was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense, they gotta have some resolution. And no, it keeps going after that, and then it keeps going after that, and then it finally hits the ending, and you're like, oh, okay, I probably would have ended it a little sooner than that, but if that was anything to go with, I would have gone, a little stronger with it. But it does kind of fall upon itself. It stumbles upon itself in the second half of the movie after it starts revealing things to the audience and everything. That's probably the biggest negative critique that I will say about the movie. This tiny thing, though, this is a little misstep on for me. It's a tiny thing, but I'm mentioning it because they make a point in the movie to stop and tell you and focus on it. At one point, Georgina Campbell's character, Georgina Campbell from Barbarian, she plays a character named Sierra in the movie, and she's followed by Mina because, at a certain point after Mina's kind of, already in there and met everybody, they tell her, everyone has a job to do during the daylight, because they can go out during the day. They're not stuck in the shack. They can go out into the forest during the day. They just have to be in the shack at night. They have to. That's the rules. That's the rule. The shack has rules. You can't go out at night. You can't open the door at night. You always have to be facing the giant window. You can't have your back to it. And you never go near the burrows. And I'll mention the burrows in a second. So Sierra's taking Mina out, and they're going out and they're picking plants or flowers or berries. And the movie stops and tells you Sierra's like, oh, this is what this plant is, and this is what this plant is. And they do a close-up of one of the plants or something. And I don't know if it plays a factor into the book, but it never plays a factor into the movie. Not once. They don't talk about the plants. They don't talk about the berries ever. Only in that section. I don't know why they do it. It's maybe it's just a little thing to make the characters more relatable, or to be this is what her job is. But they make it seem like the plants are going to play a factor into the movie. They do not. Ever. And also, in the actual synopsis for the movie, I made up that little synopsis at the beginning. It tells you that Mina is an artist. She's labeled as an artist. And we do see her, she sketches throughout the movie every now and then. And we see some of her sketches in her apartment. And we're assuming there's a point in the movie where you see the floor of the shack near the end. And it's basically kind of a layout of the forest with the routes in between. Because throughout the movie, you see these markers, if you will, telling you this is the point of no return. Because once you cross that point, you can't make it back to the shack in time at night. So there's basically a giant map on the thing, and we're assuming that Mina is the one that actually does it. I think we see her a little bit sketching it out. But her being an artist isn't really that important to the plot, at all. I don't know why they even again, it's probably just a nice characteristic for the character to have something else besides her being someone that's trapped in the shack and someone that has a tragic backstory, because Mina does have a tragic backstory. But yeah, there's no reason for the movie to stop and be hey, this is the plant that you should worry about, and show a close up of it. It's there's no reason for that. It never they make it seem like it's going to play a factor in the movie. It doesn't. But all right, that's it. That's all I got for the cons and missteps. Let's move on to the pros. The cast. I've already been talking about the cast a little bit. The cast, for the most part, is what keeps this movie pretty much going. Fanning is pretty much always reliable in everything that she does, and she is reliable here, as she always is. Mina, like I mentioned, has a tragic backstory that plays into the movie. I won't get into that because I think that should be something that you should experience while you watch the movie. But she's very good in here. Georgina Campbell, like I mentioned, from Barbarian. She was also in Bird Box Barcelona. She's kind of becoming a little bit of a screen. I don't want to say screen queen, but putting herself establishing herself in the horror genre, which is very cool. And it works for her. It really does. But her Sierra here, she does most of the heavy duty emotional stuff. Her character, she tells Mina that her character and her husband were the last new people in the shack. And they've apparently been there for like months. And her husband, who we do see, we know his fate. Obviously, you don't see him you do see him in the trailers. He's the guy that's running in the forest and that guy's kind of get dragged away. That's Sierra's husband. So, not a spoiler, it's in the trailers. So, but she kind of gets the more emotional, heavy lifting stuff here. Oliver Flanagan, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right. He plays Daniel. He's the youngest of the group. And at first when you meet him, you think that he might be a little out there. He's a little crazy because he's putting on the show for the Watchers, who are the people, the mysterious, creatures. They are creatures outside who are watching them through the window. He's putting on like this play. He's like, here we have a new person, Mina. Will she, go along with the rules, or will she, just sit there in the corner and not say anything? So he's very much putting on like the play and the performance for the people who are watching them, the things that are watching them. And because he's the youngest, as the movie progresses, he starts making kind of like these little brash decisions. But it makes sense because he's the youngest, and you kind of understand that, he's making these decisions because he knows he's the youngest, and he knows that the last character we'll talk about here, in Madeline, sees him as the youngest, and she kind of pushes him around. And it's like, okay, we see the kind of the way he is. He is the way he is because he's viewed as the youngest. So he's viewed as, not to say less than, but he's kind of viewed as, you're the youngest, you don't get to say it in things that are going on. So let's talk about Madeline, our last real character, played by, I'm gonna mispronounce her name, and I am sorry, Owen Fourier. I don't know if that's how you say her name, but most people will probably remember her. I think I first recognized her. I think most people first recognized her in Mandy. She plays one of the crew people. She played an older Sally in the Netflix's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And then recently we saw her earlier this year in Tarot, if you saw that. So she has this tendency of playing like the older, creepy older women who like maybe know stuff, maybe knows more than she's letting on. Like that's kind of like what her role is now. And she plays it well. No offense to that. And she plays it here. She's a character. She's the oldest one. She's also the person that has been there the longest, according to Daniel. Because she was already there when he got there, and when Sierra got there and her husband got there. So she knows a little bit more than she's letting on. And then she does eventually, reveal kind of what's going on in some way, shape, or form. So the cast works here, mainly because it's really just them four for the majority of the movie. And they work very well off each other. So there is that. And I will say, I mentioned the second half of the movie that stumbles upon itself. The first half of the movie is very good. It plays up the mystery aspect perfectly. You don't really know what's going on. You don't know if you can fully trust these people. You don't know, because you don't know what's going on with Mina, because Mina's backstory hasn't been revealed yet. So when like little things start happening, you're like, what's going on? So it's really great. And then there's this really great tense scene where Mina goes down a burrow. So we do have, I mentioned the burrow earlier. We only really see one. I don't know if there's multiple, but there's one obviously that they play, or that they factor into the movie. And apparently the rule is don't go near the burrow, because that's where the Watchers, because that's what they call them. They call them the Watchers. That's where they live. They live down there. We don't go near them. We don't go near it. Especially, even during the day, you don't go near it, because you only have this little spot of sunlight which is the hole that you go down. And it's very, very deep. And Mina ends up going down the hole because she's the, I want to get out of here. I'm not going to do what you tell me to do. I'm kind of a little bit of a brash person myself. And then she gets down there, and it's a very tenseful scene of how things get played out. The score is pretty good. I think I noticed the score more near toward the end, kind of like toward the final little bit and push for the movie. So, and it kind of plays a little bit during the end credits, which I thought was very good. It kind of fits the movie for what it is. So I'll mention that. So overall, The Watchers, like I mentioned and have been mentioning, has a strong first half, but it really stumbles upon itself when its reveals, and in the second half, concept and idea wise, like once you get the reveal of what it is, it's kind of cool. That is totally my thing when they reveal what's going on. That is totally my thing. I love that kind of stuff, but the execution of it in this movie felt a little lacking. And I think when you kind of look back on it and kind of pay attention to certain things, it's like, oh, that kind of makes a little bit of sense. Kind of, not really, but the execution of it is the thing that's lacking. Again, idea wise, that's totally my thing. And I'm sure it's some other people's idea, something too, but I didn't, again, I don't know. And again, maybe it works better in the book. I have not read the book, but we're not obviously talking about the book. This does feel like a reveal that works better in a book than it does in a movie. So I'll give it that. Again, the cast keeps it together. And when it comes to Ishana Shyamalan, I haven't forgotten about you. I mentioned you. I haven't forgotten about you. You can see the potential that she has. She has eye for it. She has the ability to really put a scene together and to do it well. It's just, I think, I don't know if it was the material. I don't know if maybe she was putting her own thing in there and it just didn't work. So I would love to see more of her work. I would love to see, what else she does, whether she continues in this genre or not. I still would love to see what she does in the future. I do think she has a lot of potential. I just think that, hopefully she doesn't have, the thing like her father, M. Night Shyamalan, who sometimes deals with second half reveals that aren't so great. But if she can get it out of the way early, then maybe we got a shot. But it's not a bad movie. I mentioned that at the very beginning. Watchers is not a bad movie. There's a lot of things to like, especially at the beginning. Some of the second half stuff, I'm sure some people will like it too. But in terms of a rating, again, stamp of approval, recommend, rental / stream it, pass, don't bother, no. I would give it a rental or stream. Maybe I'll even steal something from Double Toasted and say matinee. Like, go catch a matinee of this movie. That's probably going to be a little better. I'll probably steal that from Double Toasted in the future. I can't fully give it a recommend because I just think there's a lot of stuff in it that just doesn't really work, and I don't know how people would react to it. It's not also because it's a horror movie, sort of. It's not too bad. I think if you can't handle horror, I think you'll be able to handle this. There's a few moments. There's like a couple of jump scares, but they're very like sporadic. They don't happen. They don't happen close together. I think you can enjoy this. I think if you're especially like getting into the horror genre, or you maybe again not a huge fan of horror, but you want to watch horror movies, I think you can handle this. I think it's not that bad. But yeah, it does stumble upon itself. It's not a bad movie. There's a lot to like. Cast is great. Cinematography is great too. But it's not execution wise. It's still lacking that little bit of something. All right, let's move on to the next movie, which is our final movie, and it is Bad Boys: Ride or Die. All right, Bad Boys, directed once again by Adil El Arbi and Biala Fala. Synopsis. Again, made my own little synopsis here. Will Smith and Martin Lawrence return as Mike Lowry and Marcus Burnett, who make it their mission to clear the name of their dead former police captain, Captain Howard, who is said to have worked with the cartels for years. Unfortunately, the conspiracy drags them into it as well, and they have to go on the run with Mike's son, Armando, once again played by Jacob Scapio. I did a little rewatch of the first Bad Boys. If you want to go check that out, it's part of the May-Bay series. I said I wasn't going to talk about Bad Boys 2 or Bad Boys 3, which is Bad Boys for Life, but I talked a little bit about it in the Bad Boys episode, and I mentioned that I really was a fan of Bad Boys for Life. I thought it was a great kind of continuation, especially after all these years that they were alone. And I said I was looking forward to this one, and it didn't really disappoint that much. I just want to make that very clear. I didn't really disappoint that much. There are some cons and missteps. Now, there's a storyline with Marcus, of course, again, played by Martin Lawrence. It happens very early in the movie, and it plays out throughout the rest of the movie, and it's a little bit too much for me. It crosses over a little bit too much. I don't want to say into like the bad zone. It just crosses a little bit too much of the line of like, okay, like you're overdoing it a little bit with it. And I don't know. I wasn't a complete fan of it. It's like some of it really works and some of it's just like, no, it doesn't really. I didn't like it. Another little misstep for the movie, the villain. I guess this would be probably my only like real critique of the movie, the villain. Played by Eric Dane in here, probably mainly known for Grey's Anatomy. He was one of the Dr. whatever. I never watched Grey's Anatomy. I just know like he was Dr. McSteamy or I don't know, one of those two. Whichever one, Patrick Dempsey wasn't named, the other one. So he wasn't that. That's probably where most people will probably know him from. But he plays the villain in the movie, and he's not the best villain of the series. He's not. He's just a bad guy because we need a bad guy in the movie. He does have a backstory, and I feel like with the backstory, I think it would have been done. It would have been a better backstory and would have made sense for his character if there was any sort of connection between him and his backstory and with Captain Howard or even with Mike and Marcus, because like his backstory is like it's a backstory that probably is true a little bit, but it's a backstory that it's there just to make him like be like, oh, this is why he's a bad guy. I don't know. He's a generic bad guy. He's a generic bad guy. I'll just say it. Nothing against Eric Dane. It's a generic bad guy with it. The last little thing, a misstep, not necessarily a con. Some of the humor does fall flat a little bit. Not all of it. Some of it goes a little flat. And that's to be expected. Again, some of it is related to the Marcus storyline, but for the most part, the humor's pretty much on point. It's the humor you expect of a Bad Boys movie. It's the humor you expect of between Smith and Lawrence. All right, let's move on to the pros. I almost put this in the con missteps, but I ended up liking it. So I would say kind of this is like a gray area for probably some people, not all people, but I think for some people. RB and Vala obviously have a very unique style in their filmmaking. And it wasn't too apparent in Bad Boys for Life. Obviously there was a style to it, and they brought their style to it. But some of us probably know their style from not just Bad Boys for Life, but from Captain Marvel, the TV show, because they directed a lot of episodes for Captain Marvel, the TV show, or Miss Marvel rather. Sorry, Miss Marvel. And they, that kind of style of filmmaking, the kind of wacky, or not necessarily wacky, but more like kinetic style of filming, they bring it here. And like, probably Sony, but like they heard the positive reaction. They're like, hey, you guys can do whatever you want. You guys go buck wild because you guys made us, a good chunk of money for the last one. The reception was very positive. You guys can go a little bit into your style here for this one. And they went at it because the camera work here is very kinetic, especially during the action sequences, especially during that ending set piece, where you get the drones. And you get the video's been going online. I'm sure a lot of people have seen it. It's there's POV shots in the movie, and behind the scenes stuff. You see that it's Will Smith controlling. He has this rig on him, and the camera is in front of him, and he's whipping that camera around like it's a POV style. So it goes back to him, and then like it switches over, and then you get the POV of the gun. It's like a video game almost. That's all him. And you can see that. And that's really, and Marcus gets a little bit of that too. It's really, really cool. Like seeing it there, like in the behind the scenes stuff, it's like, oh, that's pretty cool. But seeing the final product in the movie, that's bad. That was badass, I gotta say. And I bring it up here in the, kind of gray area because it might be too much for people. There might be people saying like, oh, it's a little bit too much. Like I've seen some people being like, it's a little too much. The camera style is, kind of a little wacky, but it's their style. And it's a really cool style. And there's a bunch of people saying that, they should, saw someone that they should take over. There's a bunch of people that said that they should take over and direct the next Spider-Man movie. And after I saw that before seeing the movie, I was like, oh, well, okay, like, that's a certain, that is, probably some high praise and some very, maybe knee-jerk reaction. But I saw the movie, I was like, you know what? Yeah. Not just Spider-Man. Let them direct whatever they want. Give them a blank check. Let them go buck wild even more to direct whatever they want. I think Bia and Fala are going to be a very, very cool duo in Hollywood in general. And obviously the thing after seeing this movie is everyone saying, like, you can't tell us with a straight face that Batgirl was unwatchable and not a good movie, because everyone saw this movie and it's like, there was no way that was an unwatchable movie. So just more hate thrown to David Zaslav because of what he did and said. And I was saying, you know what? After what he's done, I'm not going to tell people no. So moving on, chemistry, like I mentioned, I briefly mentioned earlier. The chemistry between Smith and Lawrence, it's still there. It's stronger in some scenes than it is with others. Like when they're bickering at one another, like there's some scenes where it really works and some scenes where it's like, I don't know about that one. Besides the action, it's the back and forth between them. Obviously, that makes this movie work. But the chemistry is still there. Again, some scenes played out more, some scenes don't. Like I mentioned, the action is really good here. The action overall in the movie is good. There's not really one bad action set piece in this movie. There really isn't. There isn't. It's pretty damn good. I mentioned the final set piece, which is great. It's a standout. But there is one more set piece that happens at Marcus's house, and it involves a character that I think if you're a fan, casual fan, especially a hardcore fan of the series, you will love that scene. I love that scene. I kind of got a little spoiled online, a little bit. I knew it was going to involve who was in that scene, but it's such a great scene anyway, to see it in its entirety. Really, really cool. Love that scene. I think if you're a fan of the series, again, you will especially get a kick out of it. And this is another pro for me. A small thing, especially just for me, because I talked about it on the Bad Boys episode that I did, the Bad Boys rewatch. They use bits of the score, or they use the score rather, from that first movie in this movie, and they use a score, a bit of a score that is not used, that I'm pretty sure they didn't use in any of the sequels, but they brought it back here, and I noticed it immediately, and I was like, "Fuck yes, thank you," because I love that bit of the score. And again, if you're a fan of the series, you'll probably notice it, or if you've been doing the rewatches, you'll probably notice it. But when I immediately noticed it, and I was like, yes, and it just made that scene even better for me. So I really liked. So I liked the fact that they brought back the old scores, or the old bits of the scores they haven't used in the sequels or from the original movie here on this one. It's really, really good. All right, so overall, Bad Boys Ride or Die is another great addition. I will say another great addition. Yes, there are things that don't work in the movie. There are, some humor bits, some storyline bits, some things that are kind of probably half-baked. Maybe another pass of the script or another pass of that idea would have been pretty good. But if you're a hardcore fan, if you're even a casual fan of the Bad Boys movies, I think you will fully enjoy this one. It's a fun ride. The chemistry between Lawrence and Smith is still there. They continue to have it. The action is great. All the action scenes in this movie are really, really good. And if anything, that will be the reason why you go back and watch this, and the reason why you like it. Yeah, I don't really have, that much more to say about the movie. Rating wise, I'd recommend it. I'm not going to give it a full stamp of approval, because there are some people out there saying that this is the best Bad Boys movie of the series. Bad Boys 1 would like to have a conversation with you if that is the case. Again, I rewatched Bad Boys 2. I think I mentioned on the Twitter page, it didn't have to be that long. There's a lot of great stuff in Bad Boys 2. There's also a lot of stuff that's not good in Bad Boys 2. Maybe that's just me. Compared to the rest of the series. And then Bad Boys for Life, there's a lot of great stuff in there. I love, just to go back a little bit, I love that this one, Ride or Die and For Life, they focus on Mike and Marcus getting older, because obviously they're not as young as they used to be, but I love the fact that it makes it a point on the movie to be like, you gotta slow down. You're not young anymore. You're not the young gun anymore. You gotta slow down. You're old. And I love that they do that. I do. I do. I love that they do that. You know, in the last one, it was, you know, taking the bulletproof mic persona and legend. It's not there anymore in that one. Here, it's, you know, they still kind of focus on that a little bit, and they do something else with Mike's character in this one, and it makes sense that they kind of do with his character in this one. And again, they do something also with Marcus. But I love that this series doesn't shy away, be like, you guys are on the older side. Like, they still do the stuff, and they're like, hey, we might be old, but we can still throw down. And they do. But I love that it still touches on them being like, hey, you guys aren't young anymore. This is the thing. So I like that the series doesn't shy away from that. But I would give this a high recommend at that. I would not say it's the best of the Bad Boys, but it is a very great welcome addition to the series. The action in this is incredible. It's better. The action-wise is better than the last one for sure. Biala and Fala have a tremendous, or Aldi and Fala, sorry, have it. They got it. They got the eye for it. They got the action for it. Let them do more stuff. Whatever it is, let them do more stuff. All right. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. Again, let me know what you thought. Do you like the con pro overall setup of it, or do you want me to do it the way I did it with the movie roundup? Let me know. I'm very interested in that. Obviously, I want to get your opinion because obviously I want to make this work. So thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. I very much appreciate it. No matter where you're listening to, very much appreciate it. I do have another thing lined up. Obviously, we're in June. It's the halfway point of the year. I'm going to do a halfway point of the year podcast. Doing it a little different than I do, but I'll talk about that when I actually do the podcast. But yeah. All right. Thank you guys. Again, make sure to check out all the links down below to the podcast, different platforms. Rate, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Very much appreciated. It helps out the podcast out in the long run. And as always, go watch some movies.
Whoop, whoop, yeah! Give it up! Movies!